As we continue on with lesson 1.5, we'll call this tape 1.5C. And I'm still on page 47, or 46 I should say. And we've got 4 different properties that we're going to look at before we close this section 1.5. The first one on page 146, if you look there, all 4 of them are highlighted with a green box. And the first one is called the multiplication property of 0. And what that is saying is that if we take absolutely any number in the history of the world and multiply it by 0, we will always get 0. Always. It does not matter what number it is, 0 is the answer. The second little green box there is called the multiplication property of 1. And what it says is that when we multiply any number times 1, we will always get that number back. And the third green box there, the commutative property of multiplication, what that says is if we take any numbers, 2 numbers, 3 numbers, 4 numbers, however many we have here, well, let's just deal with 2 numbers. We'll deal with the 3 and 4 and above later. But whenever we have 2 numbers we're multiplying together, we can switch those numbers around. They're commutative. That means that we can switch those numbers and multiply in any order. 3 times 2 is the same as 2 times 3. Which brings us to the fourth property called the associative property of multiplication, and that's where we get into multiplying lots of numbers rather than just 2 like we did in the commutative. And what it says is if we have 3 times 2 times 4, we can multiply that as 3 times 2 is 6 times 4 is 24. We can also take 2 times 4 is 8 times 3 and give us 24. We can also multiply 4 times 3 first and get 12, and multiply that then by 2 and get 24. So the associative property of multiplication says that it does not matter in multiplication what numbers you multiply together if you have a whole list of numbers being multiplied. And that's convenient sometimes, because sometimes you'll run into some numbers where you're like, okay, 10 times 9 times 3 times 6. Well, you might look at that and be like, well, I know 10 times any number. That's really pretty easy. So if I took 10 times 9, that automatically gives me 90. Well, then maybe you remember that 90 times 3 is the same as 9 times 3 with a 0 on it. So that would be 270 when you multiply these. So you're still multiplying in your head. Well, now you've got a 270 times 6, and you're thinking, you got to do that on paper. But that's okay, it's only 1. Whereas sometimes if you're just going from left to right, you might have to multiply out several times in order to get your answer. So it's just a more convenient way of multiplying the numbers that you know the product of and then putting those together with the rest of the numbers later. So it does make it easier, plus it just does give you that freedom to move things around. On page 47, bottom of the page, there's this last part called D, and it's called solving equations. And an equation has an equal sign. And what they're doing there is they're giving you some problems such as 15 equals 3 times n. And just trying to get your feet wet a little bit as far as what to do when you're given a letter in an equation. Actually, what that letter is an unknown. There's a number that represents this n that will make this a true statement. 3 times some number will give you 15. And it's just getting you started to practice a little bit, dealing with these called variables when you've got a letter. So all they're asking for is what number does this n represent? And obviously it's a 5. 5 times 3 is 15. So that's what they're doing in D. Which brings us to problem set 1.5 on page 49. Rather than start a new video, I'm going to go over a couple problems from that section, and you can either turn the video off now and get started in the homework, or stick around for a little bit as we do some of these multiplication problems. Now if you look at 1 through 12, those are just multiple digit times single-digit multiplication problems. And one of the things that you'll notice there is they're all multiplied by hundreds or thousands. And if you look at, let's say, number 3, 3 times 200, you can do these in your head because all you're doing is multiplying the numbers, 3 times 2, and then adding the number of zeros you have, and you're done. If you get one like 3 times 7,000, you're multiplying 3 times 7 and adding 3 zeros, and you're done. So it's as easy as that on the problems 1 through 12. If you jump down to 13 to 30, start out with some 2-digit times 1-digit numbers, and you continue all the way on to page number 50, where you've got some that are 5 digits by 4 digits. Now please, I cannot monitor you obviously because you're at home, but please work at doing these without a calculator. I know your calculator knows the answer. The fact that I'm trying to figure out is, do you know how to do these? So let's do number 40 while we're here, and just go through the basic multiplication here. I'm going to write a little bit smaller. I will run out of room since this is a larger number if I'm not careful. So I have 455 times 248. Now if you remember in the lesson, with the addition, with the subtraction, with the multiplication, you always start with the furthest to the right digits. So we're going to start out with our 5 times 8. So 5 times 8 is 40. Again, you write down the last number, not the whole 40. You carry the 4. Then you multiply the 5 times the 8. And you also get 40, but you also have this 4 that you carry. So you have 40 plus 4 is 44. Bring down just one digit. Carry the first one, the 4 and the 44. 4 times 8 is 32. Add the 4 is 36. Notice I still have my columns there. My columns must remain. So now I've multiplied 455 times 8. 3640. Now I'm going to multiply 455 times 4. And actually, because that's in the tens position, it's 455 times 40. But let's go ahead and just look at it as 4 and multiply it. 5 times 4, well, let's erase these. We're done with these. We used them on the 5 times 8, 5 times 8, and 4 times 8. Now we're going to erase them and start over with the 455 times 4. 5 times 4 is 20. And remember, we're going to keep in line here. I kept these in line. The first number I put down, 5 times 8 is 40, and I put the 0 under this column. Now I'm going from here to here, so I got to keep the first number in this column. So 5 times 4 is 20, carry the 2. 5 times 4 is 20, plus 2 is 22, carry the 2. 4 times 6 is 16, 17, 18. Okay, again, I've still got my columns there. So I just multiplied the 455 times 4. Now I have to multiply the 455 times 2. So again, columns, keeping them straight. 5 times 2 is 10, carry the 1. 5 times 2 is 10, carry the 1, add the 1, which gives me 11. 4 times 2, oops, got to carry that 1 from that 11. 4 times 2 is 8, carry the 1 is a 9. Now I can add all 3 of these columns, because again, this is 455 times 8, 455 times 4, 455 times 2. Now I'm going to add all these up, and once I add all of these up, I am going to get what 455 times 248 is. And I got 112,840. The columns have to be lined up. If you want to, if it makes you feel better, if you want to put a 0 here and a 0 and a 0 here just so you have columns here and actual numbers here, go ahead and do that. That's fine. The 0 isn't going to change anything. Alright, so that's basic multiplication. So that is problem set 1.5.